The pandemic is estimated to have destroyed 250 million full-time jobs in 2020. That's according to the International Labor Organization. So how do workers get back on track? Joining us now is William Lee. He's the chief economist at the Milken Institute. That's a think tank here in Washington. William, thanks for being with us. First, what type of jobs were most affected, would you say, by the pandemic?
Well, this pandemic has devastated labor because the policies that were put in place to try to combat the virus were targeted at the service sectors, shutting down people-to-people facing activities. And that, of course, affects not just labor, but the lowest paid labor, the marginalized labor markets around the world. So this has really been quite devastating for the people who could least afford to be affected.
Which countries would you say were best positioned pre-pandemic with social safety nets or other means to support the impacted workers?
Well, of course, the safety nets are strongest among the governments that were most involved in people's lives. So the European economies, some of the China, for example, some of the emerging markets were also protecting their labor markets very carefully. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is what governments were successful in restoring jobs to people. And there you find that China was successful because it was so industrialized that they put people to work very quickly because they managed to contain the virus. Here in the United States, we see a tremendous revival because the markets were able to put together a plan to reopen the economy once the regulatory people got out of the way and allowed the economy to reopen again.
A report by a U.S. nonprofit said last week that had Walmart workers in America gotten 2 weeks of paid sick leave, 7,500 infections could have been prevented and 133 lives saved. I have to admit that seems even just a little conservative to me, those numbers, but the Biden administration is spending big to get jobs back on track. Is that the right approach, or does the definition, the standard of employment in America need to be redefined?
Well, as you were mentioning earlier, the people who are most devastated are the people who can least afford it. So these are Walmart workers and the low-paid service sector workers. Opening up the service sector is key to getting them back into employment and gainful employment again. The Biden administration is spending on assorted programs that are geared toward enlarging the role of government, like the regulatory apparatus. A lot of the infrastructure bill was, for example, targeted toward increasing the role of government in the U.S. economy. And that, to me, feeds the government sector, but doesn't necessarily get the money to the people who need it the most.
You mentioned there the loss of jobs. Some of these jobs, we understand, during the pandemic were replaced by robotics. Some of these had to do with businesses that are affected by people no longer going to the office. Is there a realistic conversation that has to be had about what jobs might not be coming back?
That's a great question, because that is the role of government. The role of government is to try to retrain people in a way, or fund the training of people so that they can move from the low productivity, low paying service sector jobs that have been outdated, because as businesses start to reopen, they also realize they have to reopen more efficiently. And so during the shutdown, a lot of businesses have invested in software and technology to try to upgrade their jobs. So people have to be capable of taking these jobs. And that's where the role of government spending can come in, to shift the training toward people who need the training to get these new high paying jobs.
May Day or International Labor Day honors workers. Is this holiday still significant, and has the pandemic highlighted that?
That's a great question. The highlighting from the pandemic effects is that the people who are devastated by the shutdown, government shutdown, are the people who can least afford it. And I think this May Day should remind us that governments should be very careful about shutting down the economy, especially when it's not clear what the health costs and benefits are. Yes, we absolutely have to protect people from spreading the virus, but can we do it in a way that is preserving of people's livelihoods? And that's a challenge that not all governments have been able to meet equally well.